Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, if you are an introvert or you think that you're an introvert or you think you're an extrovert, you might change your mind at the end of this episode. Me and my brother Matthew, he's going to be dropping some serious bombs. You've probably seen him on Forbes. You've probably seen him on Entrepreneurs on Fire twice. We're going to be talking about how to scale your business, but not only scale your business, but how to scale your life. Matthew, my brother, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, man. I'm ecstatic to be here.
How are you doing today? And by the way, tell us where you come from, because obviously you're not from New Jersey.
So you don't think this is a North Texas accent then? So no. I live in the US now. I've lived here for about 12 years, and my family will say I sound so American now. Everybody that I speak to that's American is like, nope, you definitely sound like you're not from around here. So I'm from Melbourne, Australia. I spent my first 30 years there, and since then I've lived here for about 12 years now.
So my first question is, Matthew, what is your definition of resiliency?
You know, I think resilience, it's funny. I did there was some interesting research on the topic of chosen stress versus imposed stress. And I actually feel that people exhibit resilience in different ways, depending on whether something's been pushed on them or whether somebody has chosen to head in a specific direction and has taken on stress as a result of that. And I see that definitely. I feel like my whole life is full of choices that I've made. And because it's all chosen stress, I feel like I'm far more resilient than the average person. But I believe that resilience is really about taking stock at every moment you can, evaluating, not hitting yourself with anything negative, no negative self-talk, and saying, does the decisions I'm making still serve me? And I think one of my favorite quotes is, every moment of every day we get a chance to decide who we are and what we believe in. We get a second chance every second. Now, that doesn't mean we change our faith every second, but it allows us to sit back and reevaluate all the decisions we've made, all the values that we have, all the beliefs that we have, and decide whether or not they still serve us. And sometimes we have to have certain beliefs to get us out of a poor neighborhood or to do that push that we need to do to get ourselves to success. And then other times, once we get out of that, they're the opposite of serving us. So I think resilience is really a matter of reevaluation on a continuous basis and asking ourselves whether or not the decisions we're making serve us, and whether the pain was worth the gain, is still worth the gain, and the directions that we want to go, and taking all pushback, feedback, negative things that happen as data points to drive forward, but not to see them as a thing that stops us.
So now, moving from obviously from Australia to the States, you had to be pretty resilient, because I'm sure there has a lot in common, but I'm sure there's a lot that's not in common. So what was that like, coming from one country to another and still being successful and not having to use excuses as why you can't be successful?
You know, I think it's a good question. I think that a lot of people that are successful in America struggle to be successful in Australia, and vice versa, because people's behaviors are a little bit different. I mean, something like Australia has what's called tall poppy syndrome, which basically means that if you're obviously successful, Australia has kind of this thing called the Aussie battler. And I
think I lost your
camera. Yeah, I lost you there for a second. So there we go. The Australians have something called the Aussie Battlers focus, which is all of us are fighting together to obtain success. And by doing that, we are constantly in a place where the focal point of the success that we're looking for is not obtainable, or we're pushing towards it, we're striving towards it. When it comes to attaining success, though, Australians aren't as supportive as you wish they were once you've actually obtained success. And we tend to have this habit of wanting to pull those people back down. It's almost like crabs in a bucket, if you like. And so what's interesting is a lot of successful Australians, when they're trying to help other people become successful, they tend to down talk their success And so Australians are used to listening to somebody that's successful and magnifying what they've heard. In America, what's interesting is everybody 10Xs. Like if they're speaking from stage or they're trying to motivate people, they blow everything out of proportion. And they say, here's all the success. And their goal is that they're trying to inspire people to be successful, to see the pain's worth the gain. They're not, don't get me wrong. There's this whole bros world in marketing that do blow it out of proportion. They rent planes and stuff that aren't true. Yeah. But a lot of people really just want to see the person that they're with succeed, or the person they're communicating with succeed. But what happens is, because people are used to that, they tend to divide it by 10 as opposed to times it by 10 to see it for what it really is. And so I feel that a lot of Australians go in with this sense of belief, but as soon as somebody blows it out of proportion, we're out. In America, people go in with this sense of skepticism, but want to believe. So it's really interesting, the different dynamics with that. Also, the way people talk about money is very different in both countries. Australia, in a lot of ways, have far more blue-collar ideology than America. America has this entrepreneur focus that doesn't come as natural to especially in cities like Austin, Sacramento, New York City, right? They don't come as naturally to Australians. So there's a lot of things you have to navigate. And for me, I also found that the way to communicate had to be different in both places. And it's funny that what I realized is the way that the common literature talks about communication in networking or in sales, I needed to change dramatically when I came to the States. And then what happened was I redeveloped it for myself. And now I find that I can use it in both countries. But the things like the elevator pitch and things like that, I hated it. I felt like it was so transactional. And even Americans don't like it, but they use it. Australians are far less likely to use it. And it doesn't work that well in Australia anyway, but they are far less likely to use it. And so they needed a different method far more. But yeah, it's been really interesting to notice the difference between the two.
Now, and I want to ask, because for me, I'm a big relationship guy. I'm all about building not transactional relationships. I'm like, for now that you're on the show, I want to become friends. I want to build a generational relationship. Mm-hmm. Like I have with JLD, friends over 10 years now. We'll be friends forever. So are the people from Australia, are they transactional, or are they more relational than some people in the United States?
Australians are definitely relationship-based. I feel like everybody wants to be relationship-based, but the way that a lot of people are taught on how to do business are much more transactional-based. It's interesting when in my second book, in the first chapter, I talk about how we got in this mess. And I believe that the way most people network, for instance, it comes across as transactional-based because the ideology is a lot of times derived from door-to-door sales. And door-to-door sales origins come from, we waltz into a neighborhood, we sell snake oil, and we go into another neighborhood, another community. Probably we're never going to come back to this one, right? So we kind of do this churn and burn thing. Well, I didn't say we do. They did this kind of churn and burn thing. And then what's been really interesting, especially as we become a lot more digitally connected, far more digitally connected than we ever have been, I believe that authenticity is the biggest currency now, because if you're not authentic, it will come back to haunt you really soon.
What are you trying to say? You mean I can't rent a Lambo and I can't rent a jet and take pictures from somebody else's house?
It's only a matter of time until people realize you're driving a beat-up Dodson.
Exactly. So, but I think before you could be successful, you have to become self-aware. And one of the big things, like we're going to talk about, is, a lot of people think, well, I'm an introvert, so I can't be successful in business. Or some people think, well, I'm an extrovert, I can't be successful in business. But what we talked about earlier is you might think you're an introvert, but you're really not. And we're actually going to do a live test right here on this show to see if I'm an introvert or an extrovert, because I believe I can be both depending on the situation.
Yeah, so I feel that psychologists have definitely made it way too confusing, and I think that happened predominantly because maybe there's too many research grants and things to make it more confusing than it needs to be. But it's really interesting. I spoke at the AAISP conference, which is a really long acronym for saying the American Association of Inside Sales Professionals, and I spoke at their main event, and then I came back to do a retreat for the senior leaders. And this is like, think about the highest rated senior leader in every sales industry. So you've got like the head of a big airline, the head of a big tech company. And I just thought it'd be fun to ask them, are they introverted or are they extroverted? But instead of giving them 2 tick boxes or unsure, I just told them to write it in. And the amount of times I got things like, oh, I was introverted, but don't worry, I'm not anymore. Like it was a disease they have to recover from. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with being an introvert once you learn how to define it. But it's really interesting. You know, a lot of people will say to me, Matt, you don't look like an introvert. And I'm like, what's an introvert supposed to look like? Are we supposed to be hiding under a bridge? Like, help me understand what an introvert is. And what I find is that people don't really understand what it is. So let me ask you one question. If you were to hang out at a networking event with a whole bunch of people that you've never met, when you walk out of that, even if you enjoyed networking, even if you got a lot of appointments and a lot of deals, or you met some great relationships, or you got offered a speaking event, or whatever the outcome was, when you leave and the initial adrenaline rush goes away of that success that you had, are you tired or are you energized?
Oh, I would definitely be energized. I'd want to go home and I'd be like, all right, Joey gave me his phone number. It's 3:00 in the morning. I don't want to text him because I think it's too quick. But I get more energized than I would be. Except I wouldn't be tired and feel like I've been all beat up.
And if you went to, and I didn't mention beaten up. So if you were to be at an event and nothing had happened, would you be the person that would say, hey, let's all go to the bar afterwards and continue talking because I'm just enjoying this? Or are you the person that's like, you know what, I think it's time for me to go home?
No, I'm the kind of guy, I don't quit. So I'm going to find somebody to talk to. And even if it's just talking about sports, talking about the Knicks or whatever, as long as I have a conversation with somebody, my night would be successful. Even if it came no business, even if we just exchanged phone numbers and we talked about the Knicks, that would be a successful night in my book.
Perfect. So what I'm hearing is, for you, as long as you've had a conversation, you would feel energized, you would call it successful, and you would go home super ecstatic.
Yep.
That makes you an absolute extrovert, right? Because the goal for you is you want to have a dialogue. And as long as you've had a dialogue, you're comfortable.
Yeah.
Now, for me, let's imagine I went to a networking event and I got maybe 3 new prospects out of it. I met the founder of a $1 billion company who wants to put me on his podcast, and all these amazing things happen. I might leave energized and excited because of all these things, but that's the adrenaline rush of all those great things that happen. The moment that adrenaline rush leaves or dissipates, I'm going to feel like I've been out skydiving and I'm exhausted, right? So I will hit a wall. And it's really interesting. So a lot of times, when I speak at a lot of events, and when I speak at events, people will get me to speak for 1, 2, 3, 4 hours sometimes. And one of the things that I'm always shocked at, or scared at up front, I guess I should say, is how's an introvert going to keep people engaged? And I'm like, if you get me to speak for 4 hours, they'll feel like it's 10 minutes. And it's because I'm so precise about what I do and everything's prepared and planned. And I'm a big believer in that. But once I've done more than a half day, I'm exhausted. It doesn't matter. Like I can do a couple of, I can do multiple 1 hours. I prefer to do one to the other. But for me, I get to that point where I'm done. Where the average extrovert, there are a couple of disadvantages. Like they're happy just to be up on stage speaking. A lot of times you can't guarantee they'll say the same thing every time. But at the end of the 4 hours, they're happy to speak for another 4 hours. They'll speak for another 4 days. And so that's definitely the difference. So for me, I love speaking from stage, and try and get me off stage because I love helping people. But the moment I do get off stage, I feel like I'm just wiped. And so for me, I will network and I will answer questions afterwards, but I do have to go into a dark room afterwards. And it used to take me a day to recover. Now it takes me about 15 minutes. It does, because I don't beat myself up like I used to. And I've learned how to reflect on things tomorrow, not today when I'm emotionally charged by it. But for the true definition of an introvert is I draw my energy from being by myself, not with people. Now people get confused because they're like, oh, but when I'm with friends, I don't get exhausted. And I'm like, no, but with your friends, you're not sitting there wondering whether they like you or not. You're not straining emotional energy. And if you're with 1 or 2 friends, you probably won't be tired. When you're with 6 or 7 or 8 friends, you probably will be more tired than the 2. And when you're with 2, 3, 4, 5 people that you've never met before, now your energy's starting to drain. All it is the battery. if you plug into a battery by walking into a networking room, I have to make sure that I plugged my battery in before, and I need to plug my battery in afterwards. But during, my battery is going to dissipate. Now, because I'm great at networking, and because I know how to work a room even before I walk into a networking room, it takes less energy than it used to, because there's less emotional strain, but it still takes energy. And that's where you get a lot of introverts say, oh, I used to be introvert, but I'm not anymore. What they're trying to say is, I don't feel as anxious. I don't feel as tired afterwards. But that doesn't mean their battery hasn't started to drain. It just means it's drained less.
And I agree. Looking at the sports world, like I worked with the WWE for a while, and you get a guy like the Undertaker. You think he'd be outgoing and gregarious, but in the back room, he's by himself. He's quiet. He's mellow. He's got a book, but the lights hit, his music hits, and then all of a sudden he's like the most outgoing person in the world. Is that Absolutely. What you're talking about?
Yeah. So when you say he's the most outgoing person in the world, he's not outgoing at all. He is just enjoying his functional skill, the thing that he's great at, and he's leaning into that. Now, what I find, and as I said to you beforehand, I believe there's something heroic about a person with enough talent, skill, and belief in themselves to start a business of their own. But what I find is, more often than not, they get stuck in this endless hamster wheel of struggling to find interested people, trying to set themselves apart, trying to make the sale. It's not what they signed up for, which is why I'm on a mission to help these people that realize that they need to, rapid growth doesn't come from getting better at their functional skill. They're probably amazing at that, instead focusing on 3 things outside the scope of that will really allow them to create the rapid growth business they deserve. And so what will happen is, a lot of times people say, oh, but when I get the opportunity to work with clients, I'm definitely not introverted. I'm like, no, because these people have signed up, they're working with you, they trust you, you fostered a relationship, and introverts are proven to build even deeper rapport have proven to generate longer lasting relationships than extroverts. Extroverts have a tendency to develop lots of relationships, less deep. Introverts have a tendency to develop less relationships, far deeper, especially with their customers. Now, usually a lot of times though, they set the paradigm of that relationship up wrong, which is why they fall on price, they're not appreciated the way they should. And those people don't develop deeper relationships because they're seen as a commodity. And that's exactly what we've got to avoid. But the thing is, when you see me before I speak on stage, I'm happy to talk to people for, I never used to, but now I'll talk to people for an hour before, no problem. And I'll go and socialize. But the 15 minutes before I walk on stage, I will disappear. And I tell the event organizer, don't think that this introvert's just run away. I just need to be mentally focused. And all I'm doing is going through my same introductory lines over and over again. At a Tony Robbins conference, when you have to walk the hot coals, they tell you to say the words cool moss, cool moss. The words mean nothing. It's to distract your unconscious mind from freaking out. So I control myself by practicing my first lines, and I walk up on stage, and I know the moment that I deliver the first lines and then get into a story, the story, by nature, short circuits the logical mind, you speak directly to the emotional mind, so we connect with people more. People remember up to 22 times more information when embedded into a story. It's why I use it in sales. But it's also proven, there's a study out of Stanford that says that when we share a story, immediately it activates the reticular activating system of a person's brain, which creates artificial rapport, which we introverts can turn into deeper rapport. And for extroverts, it's far deeper rapport than what they would normally share anyway. They would normally experience anyway. So it's really powerful. And once I'm in my first story, I feel everyone's brain synchronized with mine, and I'm totally fine. So the reason why I'm saying this is that for a lot of people, when they get the opportunity to operate in their zone of genius, they're fine. It doesn't mean, like for me, I get to operate in my zone of genius for 4 hours on stage sometimes. It doesn't mean afterwards I'm not tired though. And you'll find that, there are lots of people that operate like that. When you think about people that are well known, well, let's think about the first thing we know introverts can't do, small talk. Well, how can that be true? Oprah Winfrey and David Letterman are both introverts. Okay, well, they don't network well. Well, Ivan Meisner, the founder of BNI, the world's largest networking group in the world, is an introvert. Okay, they can't sell. Well, I'm on the list of top 30 global sales professionals in the world. And so, and Zig Ziglar, the most well-known sales trainer that ever lived, is also an introvert. I interviewed him on a podcast I have called The Introvert's Edge. And he talks about all, his dad, how introverted he is. And Zig Ziglar and Tom Ziglar, both very introverted. And they use sales strategies that allow for or plan for authentic connection to feel more congruent. everything that I've ever developed was designed to, well, firstly, allow people to be more congruent in the dialogue so they feel more authentic. And then more importantly, eradicate small talk, which you can't do unless you use not testimonials and case studies. I don't mean that, but stories to connect with the person and develop that reticular activating system bonds so that you don't need small talk. So the thing that most people think about introverts is that, oh, they put on extroversion. I feel like that is a burden that no introvert should ever put themselves under, right? You don't want to behave like an extrovert. It doesn't even work that well for them. Extroverts are sitting there going, I wish I listened more. I wish I was more empathetic. I wish I wasn't so blasé. Extroverts have their own burdens to bear. They have to practice active listening. They have to practice how to empathize. But the thing is, they know they can get coaching to fix those things. Yeah. For the introvert, though, it's different. We know for a fact that we can't learn those skills. So we don't even try. So we unconsciously avoid sales, avoid networking, avoid opportunities that we think are designed for the gregarious person. The truth is that I believe introverts that are willing to leverage their natural strengths and follow a proven methodology outperform extroverts in all of those so-called extroverted arenas. But the ones that don't are the ones that either don't try or fail at it. It's Winston Churchill has this quote, those that fail to plan to fail. And I believe that introverts, because we believe that we can't, don't try, and therefore we've planned to fail.
I love it. And I also believe that, like I used to be a cage fighter. And I know a lot of people before they got in the cage, they'd be all excited. They'd be moving around and I would just get quiet. I just got really quiet and just thought things out. Like before I'm going to speak on stage, I get very quiet for 10 or 15 minutes. But as soon as Eminem's Lose Yourself hits, my music hits, that's it. I'm in my zone of genius. And I think that helps when cause if you see most people that are really successful, they have routines. Mm-hmm. Even like football players, there's Ray Lewis, Deion Sanders, they all had routines. Jerry Rice, they all had routines, and it got them into that zone. So do you believe that getting better routines can get you better results?
I believe that routines are the only way to get better results. So I feel that if you don't have a routine of constant improvement, then you're always going to be at the status quo. And that's not staying where you are. That's moving backwards while other people are moving forwards. I believe that everybody must follow a process, not to become someone they're not. And I think that's really important. Like for me, when I talk about sales or networking or whatnot, I don't want people to pretend they're extroverted. I don't want people to pretend they're anything. I want people to portray the best version of themselves. But to portray the best version of yourself, my routine is I research who's going to be in the room before I even go there. I start to connect with those people in advance. I focus on making sure that when I get there, it feels like more planned meetings. I know exactly what I'm going to say. I know exactly how to say it so that when I'm in a networking room, I don't feel so uncomfortable. If I get rid of that routine and just show up in a networking room unplanned, unprepared, I mean, how much better am I going to do? I'm going to do terribly. I'm going to end up walking up to someone that's going to try and sell me insurance. And I'm not going to know what to say to that person because I didn't expect it.
And I think just like podcasters, there's great podcasters and there's okay podcasters. Like for me, I knew you were coming on the show. So I must have listened to at least 10 or 15 hours of interviews you've done, especially on EOD, EOF, I mean. But I think in order to be prepared to talk to you, I have to know who Matthew is.
Yeah,
I can't.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I know what questions I want to ask, but I have to be prepared. Like you said, I get to an event usually the day before, and then I get to the event a couple hours early in plain clothes, and I'm shaking hands, kissing babies. I'm talking to people. So when I get up on stage, I've already talked to Craig. I've talked to John in the audience already. So I'm already warm when I get up there. And I think a lot of people, they just show up to an event, they get on stage, and then they wonder, well, I just shit the bed here. Because you're not prepared, right?
I think that happens all the time. Like when you get an extrovert up on stage and say, you did amazing, do that exact same thing next week. They can't because they won it. And when you win something, you can't redo it. And then also a lot of extroverts have this classic, I can get up on stage and wing things. That doesn't, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And so, yes, if you send somebody, if you and I got up on stage completely unprepared to talk about a topic that neither of us know well, you are going to make me look silly in how much better you are at that than me. But if you get up on stage and wing it and I spend a week researching it before I walk up on stage, I'll run circles around you. Yep. And so there is a benefit to planning and preparation for both introverts and extroverts. The thing that I know for a fact is we introvert, the joke I make is that introvert, both groups benefit from a sales system. Both groups benefit from a networking system. The difference is that introverts are terrible at sales and networking without it. So we tend to hold on to it for dear life. And then we get better and better and better at it over time, which is why I believe introverts outsell and out-network their extroverted counterparts. Not all extroverts, but most extroverts love the fact that they can wing things. So because of that, they'll follow a system for a second if we can get them to, and then they'll go back to winging things. And they take pride in that, but then that's why day by day, week by week, month by month, an introvert overtakes and then ends up miles forward. Jeffrey Gittermore is a great example. I was on his podcast, the Sell or Die podcast, and I think we did like a 90-minute show together. And his point was, he's a big extrovert, but he couldn't actually teach other people or advance beyond a certain point until he followed proven methodology.
And I think that's totally, I agree 100%. Now, I don't know if you know this, but I've read both your books.
Terrific.
Your first book, I've actually read 3 times. I'm actually on my 4th iteration. But you talk about the 3 things. And I believe, I'm the keep it simple guy, the keep it simple, stupid guy. If you give me 3 things to do, I could do 3 things. So let's dig deep into your 3 things principles.
Yeah, sure. I mean, for me, I believe that a lot of people, they come to me and they say, can you show me how to network more effectively? Or can you show me how to close more deals? And usually they start with sales and networking, they've kind of already lost. So for me, what I look at is I look at how we can avoid the battle altogether. And there's no better example. Like I worked with a lady, Wendy. She was a language coach out of California, and she taught kids and adults Mandarin. And for the longest time, she charged $50 to $80 an hour for private consultation. No problem. Then the problem she had is there were people moving into California willing to charge $30 to $40 an hour for private consultation. There were people that were in China offering to do it for $12 an hour on Craigslist, thanks to the global economy we live in. And then there were people that literally, had in San Francisco, people that had created technology, Richard, I'll teach you English, you teach me Mandarin, we won't charge anyone anything. So she's competing against free. So she's like, teach me how to sell so I can, because I'm losing current clients, I'm struggling to get new clients. No, if I do that, you're going to be fighting in a contested market. Let's avoid the battle altogether. So what I did is looked at the hundreds of clients she worked with over the years, and I discovered there were 2 people specifically that she helped with far more than just language tuition, right? These are executives being relocated to China, and she helped them understand the difference between e-commerce in China and the Western world, why respect is important, why you've got to reduce your accent, not just learn the language, how to handle a business card, why it matters so much in China. She also helped them understand the difference of rapport. Like, Richard, if I was trying to sell you something in the Western world and I'm bad at sales, I would ask you something horrible like, do you want to move forward? And if you said you want to think about it, I know my chances of getting that sale, if you say you still want to think about it a week from now, are almost non-existent. In China, they're going to want to see you 5 or 6 times before they even discuss business. They're probably going to want to see you drunk over karaoke once or twice. It's just who they are. But the reason for that is not talking about transactional 24-month deals. They're talking about 20-year contracts. So they want to know the character of the person they're doing business with. And so for me, I was like, when are you doing so much more to help these people than just language tuition? What are you doing? And she's like, they're just a few things. I'm just trying to help. Just like everyone that's listening to this, she was stuck in her functional skill. And by the way, for the people that don't think there's anything different about yourself, ask yourself if you've ever got a referral or you ever had somebody write you a really kind testimonial. Nobody says, oh, you've got to meet my mate, Richard. He does nothing exceptional at all. So I want to refer you to him, right? It just doesn't happen. So for
I hope not.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, everybody has different experiences, different backgrounds, different abilities to help people. And it's far more than just customer service. And by the way, for I promise you, if you call the customers that sing your praises and give you testimonials, if you call them, blame me. Say, I was talking to a person, or I heard a coach, and he told me that I should ask my best customers. So firstly, appreciate them. Thank you for being one of my best customers. I would like more just like you. So I wanted to understand what it is that you think is better about me than all the other people. Because, obviously I don't, I'm not the cheapest or whatnot. Don't trust me. They know that. You don't have to hide that from them. They think about it every time they pay your bill. And then I guarantee they'll respond. You provide amazing customer service and you're really knowledgeable. Totally useless information, because everybody that provides bad service will still say they provide great service. No one's going to say, hey, Richard, I'd love to work with you. I don't know much and I'm really bad at servicing people, right? Everybody expects that they'll find that out later. But if you say, thank you so much for talking about my knowledgeability, Richard, what specifically about my knowledgeability has helped you? The treasure trove of information you'll get by asking the word specifically will be amazing. Well, for Wendy, it was these three things. And I said, Wendy, you're stuck in your functional skill. Is it fair to assume as a result of the assistance you're giving these people, they're going to be more successful in China? And she's like, yeah, that's the point, right? I said, well, great. Well, then let's call you the China Success Coach. This is what I call a unified message. I said, forget about what Mandarin education for a second. Let's create what we ended up calling the China Success Intensive. Now, this was a 5-week program that works with the executive, the spouse, and any children being relocated to China. And she's like, well, I love the idea of this, but who do I sell it to? What she's asking now is, who do I go networking to meet? What she's asking is, what's my niche? Who am I targeting? Which is the second milestone. Now, everyone has an issue with niching because they know it works. They just know it doesn't work for them. And it's just a fear-based mentality. And we can talk about the reasons for why people are in their own way. Because you don't need to fire your current clients. You're not going to lose any referrals. This is a new market acquisition strategy only. I said, well, who do you think your ideal client is? And she's like, well, obviously it's the executive. I'm like, that makes sense. I've moved from Australia to the United States. I was terrified, and they speak the same language here. Imagine going to China. Still don't think it's your ideal client though. She's like, well, obviously the companies would pay. They got millions of dollars riding on an executive being successful. I said, well, that makes sense. I don't think it's your ideal client. Now she's frustrated with me. She's like, well, who then? And I said, I think your ideal client is the immigration attorney. Now she looks at me like I'm speaking a foreign language. And I'm like, think about it for a second. These people are terrified to go to China. They're recommended by, the company's willing to pay. And if they're recommended by their attorney, they're not even going to question it. But think about the attorney's business model for a second. They probably make $5,000 to $7,000 for doing a visa. They've got to deal with all the bureaucracy and the paperwork. They've got to get a client. They've got staff to pay for. They've got rent. They probably make $3,000 profit for every successful visa. I said, so just offer them $3,000 for a simple introduction. They love the idea. They're like, double my profit for a simple introduction? Sure. What have I got to say? She said, just get them to say, congratulations, you've now got your visa. I just want to double check though, you're as ready as possible to be relocated to China. Now, these overconfident executives would often respond with, I think so. We've got our place sorted now. We're learning the language. Kids are getting pretty good at it too. We've got our visa now. Thank you. I think we're set. And they would just respond with, there's a lot more to it than that. I think you need to speak to the China Success Coach. Think about that introduction. Terrified to go, company motivated to pay, recommended by their attorney, which is why she was able to charge $30,000 for doing this. Minus a $3,000 commission, she made $27,000 for the easiest sale in the world, instead of hustling every day to make $50 to $80 an hour. So what this comes from is saying, what are the things that I do outside the scope of my functional skill? For Wendy, it was rapport, respect, and e-commerce. The high-level benefit was China Success, which is the next question you need to ask. What is the high-level benefit of that? For me, think about it. I'm a business coach. I'm a branding expert. I'm a social media strategist. I'm a master in neuro-linguistic programming. The only thing I know for sure is nobody cares. They don't care how hard it was for me to learn these things or how long it took me to learn it. But when I say I'm the rapid growth guy, the simplicity of that message gets me heard in a crowded marketplace. By channeling it towards my passion for helping introverted business owners, that specialization gets people to see me as the only logical choice. Now think about how much easier sales and networking is, which is the third piece. So create a unified message, your version of the rapid growth guide, the China Success Coach. Then pick a group to specialize in that you can become the only logical choice. I started with just introverted business coaches, then introverted coaches, then introverted professional service providers. And I slowly built it out to now I help introverts everywhere. That's the second piece. That's what makes sales and networking easy. But then you need to build a networking system that feels authentic to you. And the best way I can frame it is most people will say, oh, I do an elevator pitch, which I can't stand. I do this for this group of people, even if it sounds so transactional. Or they'll say, oh, I just say, oh, what I do is complicated because I've got 2 businesses that I work on. I'm like, great. Everybody wants to get confused the moment they meet you. I say, let's pull out a pen and paper and work through it. Or they'll say, oh, no, I just ask them questions. I don't actually answer. Oh, great. Everybody loves to be interrogated the moment they meet you. None of that works.
Yeah.
So for me, I found if I said I was a sales trainer, people looked at me like I was one step above a scam artist. If I said I was in marketing, they're like, oh, I need that. How much do you cost? Instead, I say, thanks for asking. I'm the rapid growth guy. Full stop. And because I was interested first before I try to be interesting, and because they don't know what it is, and it's a puzzle, our brains are programmed to solve puzzles, they would ask, what exactly is that? And then I would respond with, thanks for asking. Well, one of the things I love to see more than anything in the world is an amazing introverted service provider with enough talent, skill, and belief in themselves to start a business of their own. But what I find, you might remember I said this before, but what I find is that they end up in an endless hamster wheel of struggling to find interested people, setting themselves apart, trying to make the sale, feeling like people only care about one thing, price. Do you know anyone like that? See how it's conversational? Then when they say yes, mainly because I've connected with them in advance, I know I'm at the right group because I've done my research, I've followed the ritual like you talk about. I then say, well, I'm on a mission to help people just like that realize they really can have a rapid growth business doing what they love, just not by getting better at their functional skill. They're probably amazing at that. Instead, just 3 things outside the scope of that really allow them to build a business that revolves around them, their family, and their life, not the other way around. Actually, let me give you an example. Then I'll tell you a story. And as soon as I start the story, their brain short circuits, I start to activate the reticular activating system, and I know that they'll remember. It's a scientific combination that works amazingly well. But if you didn't pick it, there were 2 major differences. One is I didn't talk about what I do, mainly because nobody cares. They don't care what I do until they can see that I care. And then the second thing is the other thing is I conveyed passion and mission rather than feature and function. One is all about me. The other is all about them. So the moment that most people get this wrong because they want to talk about what they do up front. I just want to help people realize I care. And then the story will tell people what I do, but more importantly, it allows them to experience what I do, to feel what I do, to go, I want what Wendy has. And that changes everything in the networking room. And the sales process is exactly the same. It should be more methodical. It should be far more passion-centric and story-centric. And the moment you have that, then as an introvert, you don't have to worry that somebody's going to jump into how much do you charge straight away. And you follow a methodical process that's proven to work, which means that you don't have to constantly beat yourself up when it doesn't go right. That customer just wasn't for you. But it happens less and less and less over time because the system gets perfected one thing at a time.
And I agree. And one thing that I love you talked about is, one of my great friends is Steve D. Sims, and he talks about swimming in the blue ocean. And pretty much you put that lady in her own blue ocean.
Absolutely.
Where there's nobody to compete with that young lady because now you're swimming by yourself because nobody else does what she does. And
Absolutely.
and I think like for me, if somebody asks, well, what do? I help people that are struggling in life or business. Mm-hmm. Simple. Because I realize that people, whether you're the janitor or the CEO, we're all struggling with the same stuff.
So one of the things I'll push back on that with, you know that to be true, and it may be true, but everybody feels like their experience is different.
Yeah.
And what I would say is when you say, I help people from the janitor to the CEO says you can't help me. And so what you need to realize is not that you won't get to work with the CEO and the janitor. And that brings me back to what I was going to highlight before is we were talking about, niching being terrifying for a lot of people. Because like by me saying I work with introverts, don't I not like I cut out half the market? Isn't that a bad thing? And I'm like, well, firstly, why wouldn't I want to be the only logical choice to half the market rather than one of the choices to the whole market? But secondly, what happens is you build this momentum in one area that you can slowly grow out. But what's interesting is I spoke at a group called the Collective Genius, massive group of extroverts, got invited to speak on that stage by an introvert that was working with me as a client of mine, and we had a great experience. He recommended me. One of the people that heard me speak was an extrovert, realized that if you don't have a system and process that your salespeople can follow, you're never selling your business. If you're the primary salesperson, without a system, your business is never sellable. So he hired me to build a sales system with him, right? And we still create the unified message in the niche, which he only found out about as a result of the advice we had, the advice I gave him. So what happens is people say, well, what I do really can help everyone. And I'm like, well, firstly, you can't be as passionate about helping everyone equally. And by talking from a place of passion, you can't even mention passion. Like, how do you talk about your passion for a person that has worked so hard to become a CEO of their business and a person that may have had a whole bunch of life issues that led to them being a janitor, or maybe they love being a janitor. But what you have to do is you have to realize that your willingness to communicate your passion for serving them means you need to make a choice on who they are. So what happens is the moment you start saying, I work with everyone from the janitor to the CEO, is they say, oh, he doesn't care about me. And that's not true for you, but you can't care about helping everyone equally. And also they'll say, well, you can't help me because my situation is different, as opposed to you're the only person that can help me because you understand my situation completely. So even if your implementation and your passion are equal for every person, that doesn't mean that your marketing has to be. And if you communicate that you help CEOs, my bet is you'll get the opportunity to work with a janitor. And if you work with just janitors, my bet is you'll get the opportunity to work with CEOs. But your unwillingness to talk to one of those groups means that you get to work with less people. Because what happens is you need to, if you want to get paid beyond what everyone else gets paid, what you need to do is you need to say, how do I become the only logical choice to this person so they pay me a premium? And then the referrals that you get from that person are outside that niche. Because the truth is, your current clients aren't going to fire you, but they don't care if you put on your website you're now a dentist. They know, like, and trust you. They're going to continue to work with you. And the referrals were referred by someone that knows, likes, and trusts you. So price isn't a problem. And even if you call yourself a dentist now, they're going to be like, Richard, can you still help me come back from this problem? But new acquisition is about getting a CEO or a janitor or a hairdresser or a cleaner to go, oh my gosh, this person gets me. And I would say go even further, because the difference between a tech CEO and what you would call a small business owner CEO, they have very different methodologies, right? They're willing to risk a lot more. They've been beaten up in different ways versus a CEO that has built a business and now they've got a board of directors and they're feeling less, like it's their business, versus somebody that has maybe had been a plateau for a long period of time. And I would build different unified messages or different ways of articulating to each one of those groups. If I pick the person that be in a plateau, I would say something like, one of the things I love to see more than anything in the world is an amazing CEO that has built a business to a point, now gets to enjoy year-on-year growth. But what I find, I just hate seeing this, is so often what skill sets got them to a certain point no longer serve them, and they find themselves in this constant hamster wheel every single day of trying to introduce new things. And while they may make more revenue, they make less profit and get more stressed every day. Do you know anyone like that? But if I'm speaking to a janitor, I would say one of the things I love to see more than anything in the world is somebody living, their career dream of being a janitor. But what I find more often than not is a lot of these janitors get to a certain point and they start to get disgruntled that they're not given the opportunities or they can't make the money that they need to truly retire, or whatever the framing is. But I can't talk to both of those groups because the messaging doesn't hit the same way.
And I love that. And I agree 100%. Like for me, because as you see, I'm writing stuff down. I'm not ignoring you. I'm actually writing stuff down because it's important to me. But I do have a traumatic brain injury. That's why I have to write some stuff down. When I started working with John Lee, the first 2 weeks we spent niching down, because that's something he told me. He said sometimes you got to go an inch wide, but you got to go a mile deep. And like for me, my perfect avatar that listens to the show is a 45-year-old male, father of 3, veteran, brand new business owner, and his name is Craig. So that's how far we actually niche down. So whenever I have somebody like Matthew come on the show, I want to make sure that Craig is getting what he needs out of this show.
Do you know what's interesting though? What's interesting about that, and I've got no doubt that that's true based on the questions you've asked me. What's interesting is that when you said that you're the comeback coach, you spoke to the janitor and the CEO, and neither of those were a veteran person trying to recreate their career or their life after they left the military. And what's interesting is if you had spoken to that group, you would have been able to talk about the fact that these people have different struggles. They've got different, and everything should have just spoken to that group. But instead, what happens is we hedge, and we hedge because we're worried about, we know that that's our avatar, and we try to subtly communicate to our ideal avatar if we've done the work, but we're not outwardly about it. And here's why. We think that by speaking to our avatar and saying, I work with, veterans that are starting their own businesses, everybody else tunes out. Here's the cool thing. When you say I work with a specialty, as opposed to I work exclusively with, the word specialty implies everybody knows that a general practitioner knows a general thing about everything, but they're not great at anything. But everyone expects the best generalists become specialists. So when you call yourself a specialist, people expect to pay a premium. If they're inside the bucket of your niche, if you like, they see you as the only logical choice, but nobody sees less of you if they're outside that group. As a matter of fact, they wish that you were as passionate about them as you are about this group. So they actually try to convince you. They're like, I'm not a veteran, but I'm struggling. I'm trying to come back. Could you be as passionate for me as you are for that veteran? Now that comes back to one of the other points that I make. A lot of people, when they think about it, they think about niching the wrong way. They're like, practically, what's the right niche for me? Or what niche can I make the most money out of? And I always say, there's nothing. I've learned you can create a rapid growth business out of anything, but there's nothing worse than a rapid growth business with customers you don't like and a business you can't stand. So instead of saying what's the most practical, what's the most logical, focus on what you're passionate about. Think about the group that you were put on this earth to serve, and think about the meaningful change you want to see in the world, or the meaningful change you want to see in organizations, or the impact you want to have. Now, most people go, oh yeah, but I've got a passion, but I can't make money out of it. And I'm like, have you ever sat down to figure it out? Because what happens is usually they go, oh, I can't make money out of that, which is why I'm doing that. And I'm like, all right, so you spent 6 minutes thinking about this. And I'm like, okay, well, let's think about my passion. 4 minutes in, 5 minutes in, they're like, yeah, but I can't see the finish line, so I'm done. And I'm like, what you need to do is take a second, because I'll give you an example. When I said I was going to work with introverted service provider business owners, and that was going to be my speciality, there were a whole bunch of coaches that said, Matt, unless you're working with people that are making multi-million dollars, they can't afford a coach of your caliber. And I said, well, I'm just going to figure out a way to make that so. And I then started figuring it out. Now I earn more than most of them, right? The thing is that it took me a little while to figure it out. Nowhere near as long as people think. I'm talking weeks, not months and years. But because I was unrelenting at saying this is the direction I'm going, my brain served me the answers. And there's a neuro-linguistic programming reason for this. Because in neuro-linguistic programming, we learn we're presented with 2 million bits of information every second. Our brain's a supercomputer, but it processes about 126. So we delete, distort, and generalize everything we feel, see, hear, smell, based on our beliefs, our values, our past experiences, our goals, what we're focused on, the works. So if we tell ourselves there isn't a solution, our brain's like, great, we don't need to focus on it. If we say we're going to be unrelenting at focusing on it, on a solution, well, your brain's also programmed to remove pain. So it's going to say there isn't a way, let's protect this person, just like our brain used to protect us from bears. So we've got two psychologies playing against us. What we need to do is say, yes, but I'm going to do it anyway. Yes, I'm going to do it anyway, and be unrelenting at finding the solution. And it's surprising how quickly the solution appears. The number of times I speak at a lot of entrepreneurial organizations, right? The groups that have over $1 million turnover, and I help them niche down, and they're like, niching doesn't work for me. They all say that. The only thing they know for a fact is that I know for a fact is they're lying to themselves. So I do literally a 12-minute exercise with them. And by the time I've done that, like 8 or 9 of them have made a niche decision. They knew the answer all along. They were just too scared to act. And as soon as you say act, then you work them through some exercises to help find the solution and the way they're going to make more money out of it. It turns out they can make more profit, not revenue sometimes, but more profit. A lot of times more revenue and profit by fixating on the same group of people.
And, and that's something that I learned a lot through Mr. Ed Milet, Mr. Tim Ferriss, Mr. Tony Robbins. I believe in the reticulator activating system. I mean, it's amazing. Even going back hundreds of years, they said, I forget who said it. I read so many books. I forget who wrote the quote, but your obsessions become your possessions. And I think if you're looking for an answer long enough, you're going to find the answer using the RAS system. But a lot of people don't really know about the RAS system. So can you break it down Barney style?
So I think that the easiest way to do it is, imagine you're going car shopping and you've never heard about BMWs before. And then all of a sudden you see a BMW that you like, and maybe you've heard about BMWs, but you didn't know about a certain model. All of a sudden you see that model car everywhere. The easiest, or the example that people give all the time, is you're thinking about buying a car and you see a car that you like in red. Suddenly you're like, I don't really think I've seen many red cars out on the road. Next thing you know, all you see is red cars out on the road. The fact of the matter is that our brain cannot process the amount of information that it's experiencing. So the way we perceive the world is a representation of what we tell our brain we want to see. That simple. So when we tell our brain we want to see a way to make money doing this practical thing, that's what it sees. When we say we want to find a way to see a way to make money doing this thing, the first thing our brain says, negative self-talk, we tell ourselves between 50 and 80,000 things a day. A lot of them are repetitive, more than 80% of it repetitive, more than 80% of it negative. So if we tell our brains constantly that we can't find a solution to this, then our reticular activating system brain knows not to spend brain waves focusing on it. So if we say we believe that there is a way to make money doing this thing that we love, it's not very long until all of a sudden, all those 2 million bits get filtered to show us what we need to see. That the reason why we don't believe that there is a way right now is that we're literally not looking. And as soon as we start looking, there are red cars everywhere.
I was thinking about that the other day because I'm looking at a nice Corvette that I'm looking at. I'm looking at a black Corvette. Now every vet I see, it's black Corvette, black Corvette.
So, and what's interesting is you're probably not seeing any red ones, and you're probably not seeing as many Toyotas because your brain can't show you everything that your brain just can't show you everything. And if it did, your brain would explode.
I love it. So now this is a teaching podcast. So, I have a lot of friends, a lot of people that listen to this. They're about to get out of the military. Most military guys and girls don't make great employees because we kind of like, we have that. I'm done when the mission is complete. I can't do 8, 9 to 5 and still leave work on the table. So if there's somebody that's listening to us that's about to get out on the military, and after listening to us, or after listening to you actually, and they figure out, okay, well, I'm an introvert. What kind of business should an introvert, do you think they should get into, and how do they find how do they find their niche?
Absolutely. So I think the first thing is most introverts, they'll type in quiet jobs and then they'll see all these jobs about fitting into society as opposed to earning. I'm not saying that they shouldn't want to be a writer or a coder or this. I'm saying that you should know that every job is open to you and you should make a decision knowing that. Now, if you don't believe that, my publisher hates me when I say this, you do not need to buy my books. Just download the first chapter of either book and I will give you overwhelming evidence that you can network and overwhelming evidence that you can sell. And you can get that at the Introvert's Edge to networking.com or the introvertsedge.com, depending on whether you want the networking or the sales book. Now, if you download, for instance, the sales book, I'll also give you the full 7 steps to a sale, because if you think about what you currently say in a sale, if you currently are a veteran that's running your own business, if you put what you currently say in there, you'll realize that there's some things that don't fit under those 7 headings. Throw that out. You shouldn't be saying that to clients. Then you'll realize there's some things out of order. Fix that order. And that's probably going to stop you having to talk about price too soon. Then you'll realize there's some gaping holes, usually around storytelling. Fix that. Not testimonials or case studies, actual stories. If we had more time, I would cover that. But if you do that, you'll double your sales in the next 60 days. Now, from a place of thinking about what it is that you're passionate about, and what are the unique skills that you have in the type of business, that really comes down to thinking about what unique skills, talents, and past experience you have. And for those people, and I suggest this to even people that are in their own businesses, they don't need to hire me for this. If they go to matthewpollard.com/growth, what they'll be able to do is download a 5-step template that literally elicits unique skills that you have, like for Wendy, the respect, the e-commerce, the rapport, elicits the knowledge and the information. For people that are in their own businesses, they're going to be wanting to say, well, this is what I do for my best customers, as opposed to the customers I'm passionate about. Please focus on your passion. But this exercise will help you think about the niche for you, or the specialization for you, or the business for you and the specialization for you, because both are important. And then it will help you create your own version of the China Success Coach and the Rapid Growth Guide. It's a simple 5-step template. It's funny, I did this at the National Freelance Association a couple of years ago. And at the end, I said, look, put your hand up if you now believe you've got a unified message that will excite and inspire people to want to know more, and you've identified a niche of wanting to buy clients. Like 97% of the room put their hands up. The sad part was, I said, look, do me a favor, just keep your hand up if this is the most time you've actively spent working on your business since you started your business. And I think it was like 82% of the room kept their hand up, right? So the key is this stuff works if you spend the time doing it. What usually happens is people are used to not having the decision for them, making the decision for themselves, but having a decision made for them. Like in veterans are always told, this is the objective. This is the first time you have to pick the objective for yourself. And that's hard. But it's worth it, because if you can get up every morning doing what you love and not being told what to do and have the freedom in lifestyle, why would you not want to do that? And everybody has these unique skills. That template at matthewpollard.com/growth helps you see that those skill sets are useful, and more importantly, how to articulate them in the right way so you become the only logical choice to have that blue ocean for the people that you want to work with. And then if you really believe that you, as I said, if you can't succeed because you're introverted, you need to know that's not true. So just, as I said, you don't need to buy the book, just download one of the first chapters and consume the overwhelming evidence that that's just not true.
My suggestion is to buy both books now, because I think they kick ass. Well, let's talk about networking, because I tell everybody, if you're going to get out of the military about a year before you're getting out, you should at least get on LinkedIn, create a profile, start joining groups, and start building up your network before you get out. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on LinkedIn, and also building up your network before you even get out of the military?
I mean, absolutely. I feel like there's so many people that are career professionals. They think they have to quit their job to start a business. And I'm like, why would you not want to have a soft landing? Like, why would you make it that hard that where you're burning your life savings before you start? And it's because they have this dream and they're scared that somebody won't be interested in it. But now they're risking their entire family's life savings on this business. Like, why wouldn't you start a year out? And then I also see other people, like, because the concept of, and I explain this in the networking book, the concept of the unified message allows you to have a blue ocean even when you're looking for a job, because more often than not, most people go into interviews talking about themselves rather than the difference that they can make to others. And usually by not separating yourself and create a blue ocean, you end up getting a job that's available rather than somebody creating a job for you. And a lot of times, especially veterans, they need to have jobs created for them that allow them to lean into their amazing skill sets, because while they don't fit into the categories that a lot of career jobs have, they are amazing in jobs that are created for them where they can provide a really unique impact. But going back to your question about the 1 year before, it's really interesting. I've got one person that I provided feedback to just yesterday, and he said, I realized that I need to start to look for a business for myself. So I'm going to spend like once a month, I'm going to go to a networking event, or once a month, I'm going to talk to somebody about possible things I could be passionate about. I'm like, why once a month? Why not twice a week? Like, why do we, like, it's 12 conversations. That's not enough to decide what you truly want and, focus on doing it for the rest of your life. And then you're discharged and, you've got to figure out what to do, right? So the thing that I would suggest to people is definitely be on LinkedIn. If you know what you want to do, go and practice talking about it in a networking room, because I have this frame, like my whole book's about teaching you how to be the clearest, not the loudest. So you don't have to go to as many networking rooms, truthfully. And once you get your message clear, you don't have to be the person taking a photo of their dog or donut on Instagram for something to say. You can be clear online and use automation in a lot of ways to get people to chase you. So my whole book is about teaching people how to master the networking room so they never have to go back to one. But if you don't know what you want to do, then LinkedIn's an amazing tool, because you should be connecting with 5-10 people a week that you think you might be interested in, and say, hey, I'm a veteran. I'm about to become a veteran. I'm leaving the military, and I'm looking at things that I might be interested in doing. And I was hoping you'd be open to letting me steal 15 minutes of your time just so I can ask about the business that you run or the career that you have, because I feel like it might be something I'd really enjoy. And I want to understand like what you did to get to where you are, and whether or not actually if the day-to-day of doing what you do is really something that I would love. Who's going to say no to a veteran asking that question? So when I get people all the time reach out and say, I'd love to understand what you do because I'm building a specialty product for groups like you. I'm not trying to sell you anything. Anything that comes up for me, I'll give to you for free. They always get customers out of it. You're probably going to get job offers out of it, right? But the thing you need to understand is inactivity in that 12-month period, again, fail to plan to fail, right? What I would be doing is in that 12 months, I would be connecting with people on LinkedIn. I'd be having those dialogues. I'd be deciding what you want to do. Once I've decided, I would then be mastering the message in a networking room, and then I'd be building up my list. I would be building up my business, well before. The difference between especially if you want to be a coach or a consultant or an advisor, like you can start that before you leave the military. You can build up a website. You can start putting some blogs on. You can start interviewing some people. You can start posting on social media and developing a relationship with people so that when you get out, you've got an audience as opposed to no one.
And I couldn't agree 100%. So I know we were going back and forth through email. I know you're so busy with the books. So what's going on in your world right now? What do you got going on?
There are a few things at the moment, actually. So I'm a big supporter of National Introverts Week, which I founded a few years ago. It's the third week of March, where I try to get a lot of what I call secret introverted titans, which are the people that I invite on my Introverts Edge podcast to talk about, outwardly say I'm introverted, because a lot of introverts feel, it's funny, like a lot of people that are successful, we introverts project extroversion upon them, or they feel like they're extroverted now. So a lot of introverts feel like they can't be successful. So I love getting people that people perceive as extroverts to out themselves during National Introverts Week. But I actually have a couple of new books coming out. So the Introverts Edge, the sales book, is getting a facelift because there's some new strategies, especially since the COVID environment, that I think would be really helpful. My new No Small Talk sales method is actually becoming a new book as well, just because I've never seen a strategy work so well in all my life. And it literally came to me when I was doing it during COVID, because I was like, people only want a 30-minute Zoom meeting now, and they've got another Zoom meeting right afterwards. So we need to learn how to close in 30 minutes. There's no time for rapport. So leveraging storytelling and teaching people how to share story to develop that rapport means that it's even more powerful for introverts. So I've got a program on my Introvert U platform called the No Small Talk Sales Meeting, but I'm decoding that into another book. And then there's another book that is going to follow that. I'm actually doing a 3-book conversation with my publisher at the moment, which is a lot of fun. But for me, I spend a lot of time speaking from stages. I love inspiring introverts. I speak at a lot of corporations where I talk about rapid growth, or I talk about storytelling, and I seed in introversion. And when I speak at small business groups, I do the same thing. I talk about rapid growth and storytelling. And then before I talk about sales, I throw myself under the bus, put up a really bad, embarrassing photo of me with acne, and help people realize that I was, that they're projecting extroversion upon me, but I'm actually very introverted. And that people need to redefine what they think introversion is, which is really powerful for a lot of people, because even if they are extroverted, they're managing introverts, or their customers are introverted and they don't realize. So what I've found is that because of my background and my success, I'm able to get a lot of people and the normal, high achievers to listen, but I also can get all the quiet people in the room to go, wow, if he can do it, I can too. So I really love speaking from stage and doing podcasts like this. So thank you, because I feel like it's the best way that I can get people to realize that as introverts, they're not second-class citizens. Their path to success is just different, while giving all businesses strategies they can use to be successful.
Well, I got to give a big shout out to your staff. Truly remarkable. I send out a message because I'm like, I don't have his bio. And they're like, I sent it already. And I was like, oh, I missed it. And they're so gracious and humble. So I just want to give a big shout out to your staff. They're truly amazing. And I'm so grateful that we got together. So how do we find you? How do we pick up your books? How do we get into your ecosystem?
Absolutely. I mean, my books are on audio. They're in print. If you, obviously, as I said, you don't need to buy the book. You can download the first chapter at the Introvert's Edge or the Introvert's Edge to Networking. But if you do buy the book, there's a full video implementation training in the back that takes you from concept to action. Because I have to tell you, like, the number of people that tell me my books have changed their life, and I'm like, oh, that's great. So you're applying a sales method like I told you? Oh, well, I haven't done that yet. So you're telling stories like I suggest? Well, I'm not doing that yet. And I'm like, well, how has it changed your life? Oh, just knowing I can sell or network as an introvert has been transformational. Not the impact I want. I want to make sure that people change their lives, make more profit in their business, change their careers. That's the whole focus of the books. So you can definitely, if you do pick up a copy of the book, whether it's the audio version, the Kindle version, or the print version, they all come with a video implementation training. You just, the audio sometimes doesn't mention it to the end. You need to obviously go to the website and access it with your receipt number. But then for other people, go to download MatthewPollard.com/growth, download that template. Those are the best ways to get into the ecosystem. And I've got a great webinar we just launched on what I believe are the 3 major pillars to rapid growth. So if you go to the website, MatthewPollard.com/webinar, you'll be able to find that, and it'll really break things down. And we've done a good job of breaking things down at a high level, but on a real tangible outcome-based level so that you can apply the stuff directly into your business.
I love it. And guys, I would suggest buy the audio book and buy the physical copy and go over them at the same time, and you'll get triple, you'll get it into your brain even double or triple than you would if you were just listening or if you were just reading. Matthew, my brother, I just want to say thank you. I'm truly humbled that I got to hang out with you today, and hopefully we can build a generational relationship from this moment forward.
It was my pleasure, mate, and absolutely. Thank you for doing this for all the veterans out there, and I look forward to seeing you sometime soon on the next episode, maybe.
I love it. And guys, remember, I always end the episode with, every morning we wake up, we have a choice. You can either be a victim or you can be a victor. And if you listen to this show, you're no longer victims of your past, but you're victors of your present and your future. And I love you guys, and I appreciate you guys. And remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is up. I love you guys. Take care of yourselves and take care of one another. Talk to you guys next week.